Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast with Dr. Thomas Hemingway. Have you ever looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I thought I'd be healthier, in better shape, feel better both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and be further along in my life? If so, come on this journey with my dad as he explores all things health and wellness from a holistic medical perspective, even as a classically trained physician. He'll share integrative strategies to optimize health and inspire you to join the modern medicine movement.
Welcome, and a big aloha! Dr. Thomas Hemingway here. Super pumped, super grateful to be with you for another episode of the Modern Medicine Movement podcast. Oh my gosh, guys, it's been crazy few weeks lately. I missed last week's podcast because we were out traveling and just lots going on. And prior to that, I broke my arm. And so it's been hectic. It's been a crazy few weeks. And we were actually supposed to be back in Hawaii. But when I broke my arm, it just didn't make a lot of sense because I can't work with a broken arm. I can't surf with a broken arm. It was like, well, maybe we'll just stay on the mainland USA and enjoy some of the beautiful winter weather and that beautiful white stuff that we like to get into and play, because apparently I can still do that with a broken arm for the most part. Anyway. Oh, guys, what a beautiful day it is. I'm trying to get a little bit of vitamin D right now. It's sunny outside, but we're anticipating crazy weather for the next week. And so if you don't hear from me, we might be without power. We might be without internet. Who knows what could happen? There's a crazy snowstorm coming in. So we might just be stuck, snowed in for the next week. But super pumped about that. Pumped about just being with you for another episode. It's going to be awesome. I just want to thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please leave me a review. Apple Podcasts is a great place to do it. That's one of the most common platforms, and it just helps the show get more visibility and get out there to more people. So if you've already done so, thank you. And for the many that have not, I know there's thousands of you out there, please click on the star farthest to the right for the 5 stars, and then the little link right below that to the left. That's a little box with a little pencil coming out the top, and just write me a review. Tell me what you're liking, what you've enjoyed. Super pumped to hear those. That's what keeps me going. So thank you in advance for that. Please write a review, share, and like the podcast with your friends, family, relatives, those you care about, because as you know, the information here can and will change your life, because I always put in a bunch of pearls that are easy to do. They don't take a laundry list. They don't take, lots of note keeping skills. They're basic stuff that can help us so much with our health, our vitality, our energy. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining my group, the Modern Medicine Movement Health and Wellness Facebook group, where I will let you know first for each and every new release of the podcast. We'll do some questions and answers. I'll try to get on there live once a week. Should be doing more of that lately since I can't go to work since I broke my arm. I'm going to be working from home like most of you, just writing and researching and studying and hopefully sharing lots of that with you. So thank you for being here. Let's get into it. Today's topic I think you guys are going to enjoy, because it's one of those things that I don't think we stop and think about enough, because we just sort of assume that these things are already being looked out for and that we couldn't possibly be getting exposed to very many toxins or other bad chemicals out there. And yet there's so many things that we are exposed to on a daily basis that are significantly hazardous to our health. Some even carcinogenic or cancer causing. Others are environmental toxins that can basically cause all kinds of endocrine and hormonal issues. There's just so many things out there that we have to be alert to and aware of, and then avoid them because they are super common. And if we don't look for them, guess what? As the adage goes, we don't often find them. We don't actually realize that they're even there. And although ignorance is sometimes bliss, I think that a lot of these things, as you learn about them, you will want to try to avoid so you can be healthier, your kids can be healthier, your family and friends, and you can be around longer. So you can not only enjoy your life during the here and now, but you'll be around and be available to your kids and your grandkids, hopefully, and maybe even great grandkids. That's what I'm hoping for, and I hope that for you too. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to talk about environmental toxins that are all around us. All around us, literally. There's chemicals out there. There's pollutants in the air. There's actually chemicals in food that are known to cause everything from hormonal problems, the so-called endocrine disruptors, the carcinogens or the cancer-causing, and all sorts of others in between. Things like heavy metals and other environmental toxins that can cause increased incidences of all kinds of diseases, everything from autism to Alzheimer's, other dementias, Parkinson's, all kinds of things that we may have been exposed to throughout our lives, and we may still be getting exposed to these things on a daily basis in some cases. So the more you know, the more proactive you can be, not only in your home and around your home, but in your communities, in your neighborhood, in your world, because it's important to be aware of these things and then avoid them. So let's get into it. Let's get into a couple of the super common ones that are out there, and let's just get into some that we may not think about as often. These are going to be ones that can be found in a lot of the things we can be exposed to, like skin products, deodorants, cosmetics, things that we don't always even think about because we're not necessarily eating them. So let's talk about these first. Some common chemicals out there that are hazardous. The first one of these is oxybenzone, Z-O-N-E, oxybenzone. And it's a chemical found in many cosmetics, things like sunscreens, lip balms, moisturizers, all kinds of skin creams. It's been known to be a common cause of disruption of hormones. It can cause low birth weight babies. It's actually super duper common. In fact, when studies have been done just looking at the prevalence, how common it is in people here in the US of A, up to 97% of us have this oxybenzone in our urine. And so this is not a good thing. This is unfortunately one of those that I think most people don't even know about until we start looking at those super long ingredients lists of a lot of those common products that we use in our homes, things from the skincare products to the lip balms, the sunscreens. In fact, for me, I literally had to throw out almost all of the sunscreens that I had because there's so much crap in sunscreen. And oxybenzone is one of those things. And like I said, it's found in many moisturizers, skincare products, sunscreens, lip balms. We don't want to be putting this hazardous chemical on our bodies. And it's super common. So for me, this and other chemicals that are found in skincare and often cosmetics, I had to really start looking for because I didn't really pay attention to this sort of thing before. And what I found is that there are, thankfully, some good manufacturers out there who are actually producing good, clean, products that don't have a lot of these chemicals in them for us to use. And we just got to look a little harder. They might be a little bit more expensive. Like, I don't know, a few weeks ago, we decided that it was time. I think my son even came to me first and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to maybe start using deodorant." And I was like, well, that's cool. Yeah, I get it. But let's make sure we can find one that is not only safe for you to use, but is not, going to be containing all these nasty endocrine disruptors and other toxic chemicals. And, 90% of what you find on the shelf of your local supermarket, type store are going to be cosmetics and, skincare, deodorants, things like that are unfortunately not as safe as they could be and can be pretty damaging and can have literally not only one or two or three, but dozens of harmful chemicals. And so we looked around, and I kind of told them my secret, what I use, and a friend of mine shared this with me years ago, is just instead of using a standard deodorant or whatever, I just use baking soda. Because it's basically safe. It doesn't have a bunch of chemicals. It just has one. And it is a natural deodorizer, right? The same reason we put this stuff in our refrigerators. The only kind of annoying thing is it's a little bit messy, but it's at least not going to kill me. So I use that. There are a couple of safe, deodorants out there. I'm not promoting any of them, but just read the labels. You can find them. They might be a touch more expensive, but I will tell you, it is worth it. So oxybenzones, look out for them and avoid them. Another one is the parabens. And I think these, a lot of us have heard of a little bit more commonly, and a lot of the cosmetics, we look for those that are paraben free, which is great. A paraben is basically a synthetic, chemically derived preservative that is often found in different skin creams, moisturizers, hair care, shaving products. The list goes on and on and on. Fortunately, in sunscreens, I don't know if I mentioned that, but paraben-free cosmetics are available. They also are hormone and endocrine disruptors. They can even be cancer-causing potentially. So we got to be careful. The FDA is not necessarily in our corner. They say, well, in cosmetics, it's a lower level. It's probably safe. But you know what? There's plenty of paraben-free products out there. So why not try to just avoid them? Avoid them. I would. Anything that's potentially carcinogenic or cancer-causing, I would try to avoid. Not good. Not good. Another one of those things that we don't often think about as much would be the phthalates. That's pH. TH. It's a funky word. PHTH, ALATES. And they're found in basically almost all plastic type products. Everything from things like plastic wrap, Tupperwares, plastic bottles, just you name it. Any plastic that's out there in toys, whatever, it's probably got the phthalates in them. PHTH. ALATES, and they are common endocrine disruptors. It's one of those love-hate things, right? Because plastic gives us so many conveniences, but yet it's not awesome. Not only are there potentially these phthalates in them, but many of us are familiar with the BPA and BP B and all the other constituents of the BPA biphosphophenols that are out there that are commonly found in plastic bottles and the lining of cans. And those are getting a lot more press recently, which is awesome. So just look for always containers that are BPA free. Also the canned goods that you may buy, if you buy beans from time to time like we do, incorporate into chilies and things like that. We often have to look hard to make sure there's no BPA in the lining of those cans. If you can get well-sourced beans and then just pressure cook them yourselves like my sister-in-law does, that's awesome as well. I don't have a pressure cooker, and I'm not patient enough for that yet, but I'll probably get there. So once in a while when we make chili, we'll have to look for, the BPA-free cans, because many of us know that BPA is not awesome, and neither are these phthalates, because they can be common endocrine disruptors. They can have an estrogenic effect, hormonal effect, which can do everything from be potentially carcinogenic and cancer-causing. It can also reduce sperm counts in dudes. Some of the phthalates have been banned, which is great. Probably more of them should be, but it's definitely on the radar of many governments. For some reason, the US of A doesn't ban as many chemicals as other European nations, and I think they really should. But, it's politics, man. It's politics. Probably the same reason why even to this day, cancer-causing, mesothelioma-causing, asbestos is not even banned in this country. I mean, it's like, what the heck? There's no safe level of asbestos, yet it's not banned. Well, go figure. It's probably politics. But anyway, these plastics that are out there, you really have to be thinking about, weighing in, convenience versus, safety. Because plastics are not awesome. And what I've done recently to help, decrease my BPA exposure, phthalate exposure, that sort of thing, is I've tried to convert to basically glass. And if we do still have some plastic items around the house, I try to not microwave things in plastic because that just increases your exposure risk. Try to just use glass. We used to have one of those plastic coverings that you could put over a plate so it doesn't splat your spaghetti sauce or whatever it is all over the top of the microwave. I'm in favor of covering it, but cover it with a glass, covering other than a plastic covering. So they're a little bit more expensive, and yes, the kids could drop and break them, but way better for your health. Try to convert to glass if and when at all possible. Reduce your plastic BPA and phthalate exposures. Just be careful because these things can mimic estrogen, as I said, and they can be endocrine disruptors. They can also, with their estrogenic-like effects, they can mess up the whole thyroid hormone pathway as well because they can kind of additionally bind with the thyroid receptor sometimes and be a little bit of a blocker there. And so they're kind of a messy endocrine disruptor, and they're found in many, many plastics. But the BPA is the one you hear about mostly. The phthalates are there as well. Not awesome stuff because they can lead to not only all these hormonal issues, but things like infertility. They can cause early onset of puberty in kids if they're exposed to too many plastics. They can even cause or be related to increases in the incidence of certain cancers like prostate and breast cancer. As mentioned, they can lower the sperm production. They can lower testosterone levels. Not awesome. So BPA free, please limit your plastic exposure because it can be in a lot of things. In fact, a lot of convenient stuff, right? Things like Tupperware and things like that. Try to convert, if at all possible, to glass. One thing I didn't convert to glass is a glass baby bottle. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but at least do the BPA free ones. I still got one baby in the house, and we're probably about to get off the bottle habit, a couple times a day. But until then, BPA-free plastics if you have to use them, because it is such a ubiquitous exposure in many of us. And certainly, as mentioned, don't microwave with plastic containers. Don't put that Tupperware in the microwave. Use a glass protective covering. If you don't want to splatter stuff on the roof of your microwave, please use a glass one. Try to use glass. I've converted a lot of my like drinking bottles to glass. I just like glass. It's cleaner. It's easier to clean. I can be more confident. That's when it's sort of sterilized in my dishwasher. I know glass is clean. It's just with young kids around, they're going to break from time to time. So just be careful about that, but glass is much, 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 much safer. And while talking about that particular topic, one of the things that's also a convenience, plastics are way convenient, right, for so many things, but also our pans, right? This whole issue of Teflon that came out, 50 years ago that we have put on the surface of so many of our cooking pans and things like that. It's just so nice, right? To not be able to have so much trouble cleaning your pans, after you cook on them and things like that. But it's not awesome. It's not awesome. Teflon has lots of different chemicals in it, but the worst thing if you do use Teflon is don't throw your pan on there with no food or nothing in it just to heat it up, because if you don't have anything on it and you're just heating it, all those chemicals are getting released into the environment that you're breathing. So don't do that. I would recommend even going a step farther and trying to incorporate more cast iron type cookware, which is way safer in the sense that you don't have this Teflon crap, but also I find that it's kind of nice to cook food in there, especially if you're using a safe oil like avocado or butter or ghee, tallow. These things actually work really well in cast iron pans, and some people will even benefit a little bit from the tiny amount of iron you get when cooking food in them, because iron deficiency as anemia is one of the most common deficiencies worldwide. And I'm not promoting, the use of cast iron cookware as a treatment for iron deficiency anemia, but in some people it might actually be slightly helpful. In those that have too much iron in their system, not good. You should always know what your iron level is. So if you haven't got yours checked, take a listen to my podcast on iron deficiency, because you should know what it is. And if you don't want, because you have iron overload or you have too much iron, you can use ceramic cookware. And there's actually a really cool one that my wife just showed me that she wants to get. And so I have that on the list for an upcoming gift for my wife, because it's pretty cool cookware, and it's ceramic. So benefits over Teflon for sure, is it's not full of chemicals. So anyway, like mentioned, overheated Teflon is not awesome. The fumes are readily inhaled. They've been shown to even kill household birds, which is pretty interesting. If they're not good for household birds, they probably aren't good for you, right? Some of you guys may have heard of this thing called the Teflon flu. It can give you this kind of flu-like illness. So, try to use cast iron or ceramic as mentioned. Sorry, I digressed a little. I don't know how we got on that, but I was talking about, the cosmetics and things like that earlier. And I just I had forgot to mention one of the common things that, both ladies and dudes do nowadays is they color their hair, right? They dye their hair, and there's so many chemicals in those hair dyes that can be pretty harmful, and you got to be careful what they, definitely read the ingredients. There's heavy metals often in these hair colorings. There's been studies that have linked people who regularly dye their hair as having a greater risk of cancer, such as non-Hodgkin's, which is a lymphoma that is not awesome. And it's not curable in a lot of people, and it's just not awesome. And it's been linked to using too many hair dyes. And one of the chemicals to look for is the phenylene diamine, which is commonly found in hair dyes. And there's also lead acetates. There's other heavy metals that are often found. So just take a look at the labels. Look for the heavy metals. Look for the phenylene diamine, as well as ammonia type concoction, because they're bad. They're toxic. They're not good, And so hair dyes are potentially hazardous and problematic. So make sure you understand the labels. Make sure to look for those that are consciously clean, that are not going to have toxic chemicals in them. And like I said, many of those sneak in their heavy metals, which is kind of funky. So, why don't we just talk a little bit about heavy metals? We've all heard about lead poisoning, right? This is one of the things I learned in medical school that was often found in kids that were eating paint chips, right? Thankfully, nowadays we generally don't use lead in our paint, but if you live in a home that's older, it's still possible to find lead in paint chips, but it can be found in other places as well. Like I said, in the hair dyes, mercury is a heavy metal that you want to avoid. And honestly, I think many of us don't even think about it. And when I was a kid, I was probably exposed to unhealthy mercury levels because we ate lots of canned tuna fish. I think because it was cheap and my mom felt like it was healthy, source of protein and stuff like that. But it's certainly been linked to mercury poisoning in a lot of people. And those samples that I was reading about, when they've done tests for it, lots of the canned tuna fish still has, unsafe levels of mercury in it. And if you're eating tuna fish often, like literally in high school, I think I ate it every single day for lunch, it can be problematic. So if you think you might be at risk for mercury toxicity, it can not only be found in the canned tuna fish, but a lot of the fish that are out there are contaminated with heavy metals. And it's just something that I think, many of us know about, but we don't pay enough attention to the source of the fish that we're getting. And primarily because not only do they have heavy metals like mercury, but there are other not awesome toxins, I could say, in farm-raised fish as well. You got to be looking for these kinds of things. Another one is the polychlorinated biphenyls, that can be potentially carcinogenic, and they can cause brain issues. So polychlorinated biphenyls are often found in farm-raised fish as well, in addition to the heavy metal issue, which is commonly mercury in fish, not only tuna fish, but a lot of the fish that is found. And I'm at risk for this because I love fish. I love fish. And, what happens is the small fish that are in the mercury contaminated waters, they get eaten by the bigger fish. And I like to eat the bigger fish, like ahi tuna, for example. And so we just gotta be aware And if we love fish, we should probably get our mercury levels checked every so often. You guys may have heard about a really sort of famous case of mercury toxicity, and Tony Robbins himself, he talks about this as one of the things that he suffered from a couple of years ago, and he was like pretty darn sick. He was in a wheelchair, had no energy. He was having bleeding ulcers from the mercury toxicity, and the dude loves to eat fish, and he just wasn't really aware that he was getting mercury poisoning. So definitely be aware. Use only wild-caught, well-sourced fish. If you're going to use canned tuna, be careful with it and make sure you know the mercury level and that you're getting it from the best sources, and so on and so forth. Because, I think the last study I read was showing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60% of all the tuna fish out there that were canned, canned tuna fish exceeded the EPA's level of 0.5 parts per million, a safety unit. And this was a study done, I don't think it was too long ago, within the last 10 years. I'll try to link it to you guys in the show notes, but it basically showed, it was basically looking at mercury in several different types of canned tuna, and it basically 60% of it was found to be not awesome. And this was actually, I just found it in my notes here, 2010. So it's, a little older study, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're still having major issues with canned tuna nowadays. And to the point where actually in my own personal dietary preferences, I just stopped eating tuna fish. I just stopped altogether. It was I just figured the risk was too high, and I didn't want to be exposing myself to unhealthy mercury levels through tuna fish when I would prefer to just eat fresh ahi or other, fresh wild-caught fish that I can get easily in Hawaii nei, not so easily in the mountains, so I don't eat as much fish out in the mountains, but you got to be aware of it. So if you don't know and you love fish like me, just get your heavy metal levels checked, especially mercury, because you would be surprised. Your level could be elevated and you may not even know it, like our good friend Tony Robbins, until you have an issue. So pay attention. Mercury poisoning is not awesome, and it can be avoided. And it's out there. It's out there in fresh fish as well as tuna fish. So you just got to be out there. While we're talking about the heavy metals, we mentioned lead. Arsenic is another one that, everybody knows is toxic, but they don't know that it may be in a lot of different foods out there. In fact, in water supplies. And it was actually the reason I stopped eating brown rice. I used to think, heck, brown rice is supposed to be more healthful. And because of the elevated levels in arsenic in many samples that have been done over the last 10 years or so, I just stopped eating brown rice altogether. I just didn't figure it was worth it. I never liked the taste that much of brown rice anyway. I don't eat much rice at all, to be honest, but occasionally I'll eat some good quality white rice because, from Hawaii nei, we love our sticky rice, right? Who doesn't love sticky rice? So I still have it every now and then, but I don't eat rice often. And when I do, I just don't eat brown rice anymore. So just be aware, it's out there. Arsenic levels can also be in the water, right? In the water. And so a lot of us may not even be aware, especially if we're living in cities where our water table may be more potentially contaminated. And guess what? They might not even tell us. So and while we're talking about heavy metals, you might think about having a good high quality water purifier. There's lots of good ones out there. I just bought 2 big systems, one for the house, one for traveling, the Berkeley brand, because I've just heard lots of great stuff about it. I don't get any kickbacks from them, but they are a good trusted brand out there. And you might think about purifying your water, because there's lots of crap in water that the government and the other folks out there aren't necessarily warning you about. Even stuff like fluoride that's, when I was in school, long touted is so awesome for you, right? I'm a son of a dentist, and he was a big believer in fluoride and how it's going to be so awesome for your teeth and all these things. And actually over the years, they found that it's not actually awesome. And so a lot of the water has been fluorinated on purpose, which, the initial thought was it was going to reduce cavities and it was going to be healthful. And unfortunately, that hasn't been totally borne out, especially in the recent literature. Initially they always say, oh, it's good for healthy teeth and gums. But guess what? It's also linked to cancer as well, and impaired, fetal development, also lower IQ scores in kids, like lots of crap that you never heard about with respect to fluoride. It should give you pause. I stopped buying fluoride toothpaste. I paid attention. I got a water purifier, like I said. Just be aware. Be aware. If you talk to a dentist that trained 40 years ago or more, like my dad, he'll probably still tell you fluoride is awesome. But in all my recent research, I found the opposite of that it's not awesome. So I've stopped using fluoride toothpaste, and I don't want it in my water either. So, make your own decision. If your review of the data suggests otherwise, it's your choice, but I just don't see that in the data that I've looked at. Anyway, one of those ubiquitous things for a lot of people because it's just in their water. Another one of those things, while we're talking about stuff that may just be around us in our homes that we may be exposed to, is our old arch enemy, asbestos, right? Me growing up in California, basically all of our insulation, all of our ceilings, all of our, popcorn ceilings, if you will, they were chock full of asbestos growing up. And so I'm sure my asbestos exposure was way off the charts as a kid. And it's not awesome, right? We all have heard of mesothelioma. It's one of these nasty cancers. There's all these lawyer commercials on TV that talk about it. But what I don't like about asbestos is that there's really not enough done by our lawmakers, government, if you will, because there's really no safe level of asbestos. It's just any level of it is not good for us. And it's in the US, it's not banned. I mean, although they've, decreased the amount in certain things, and they've tried to not use it in the ceilings and insulation and stuff like that, but it's still being used on so many things, maybe in a lower percentage, but it's being used, like these artificial fireplace logs often contain asbestos. When I was growing up, our, hot pads to take that food out of your oven were full of asbestos, In fact, I remember in chemistry class in high school, my professor touted how awesome this, asbestos, like hot pad type things that we used to put on our hands in chemistry class was, because it didn't catch on fire, We didn't really know too much about the fact that it was going to cause cancer. Hopefully not, but that it could cause cancer, later in life. And so, many of us may have been exposed to asbestos over the years, and hopefully now we're just more aware of it, and, just pay attention to ingredients and things like your, insulation, your drywalls, your stuff that they're using in your ceilings, like I said, artificial fireplace logs. There's toys actually that can even include asbestos in them. So it's fairly ubiquitous. It's unfortunately out there way more often than you would think. And it's, as I mentioned, it's not awesome. And it's unfortunately too omnipresent and ubiquitous out there. So be aware and try to reduce your exposure. One of the other things I really wanted to talk about is some of these things we're exposed to often without even really knowing it. And these are things that we inhale or breathe. And we all got to breathe. We all breathe every day and many, many, many times a day. And we don't often think about what we're breathing in, especially those of us like me right now, that many of my hours of the day are spent indoors recently because, when it's 5 degrees outside, you can't be outside all day. I go outside, get my fresh air and whatnot, but for the most part, my windows are closed and I'm rebreathing a lot of stuff that may not be awesome. So I've started to pay more attention. There's lots of stuff that we use in household products that can be considered what are called volatile organic compounds. They can be in paints, they can be in varnishes, they can be in cleaners, disinfectants, all kinds of stuff. Hobby products like all these glues that we might use, like we do little school projects, and we got to pay attention to the types of glues that we're using because we don't have a really well ventilated area, right? We got all our windows closed because it's single digits outside. So we need to pay attention to the stuff that we're using in our cleaning products, right? Because there's all of these, volatile organic compounds that are not awesome. And, I could give you a whole list, name them off. It would bore you to death, but there are so many of these things that they can even be, colorless and not as recognizable as we'd like, but there's a lot safer options out there for household cleaners. Just pay attention to the different cleaners that you're using. I mean, honestly, what I've started to clean with a lot is good old-fashioned lemon juice. Lemon juice is awesome for cleaning so many things, and it ain't gonna kill you. So you'd be surprised. You can Google all the uses of lemon juice in cleaning, and you will be shocked at how many things you can clean with 2 items, really, right? There's 2 cleaners I love that are more safe and natural, and that's lemon juice and baking soda. Between those 2, you can clean just about anything. But the other things you got to be aware of, especially when I'm living in Hawaii, is breathing in a bunch of mold and things like that, because it is not awesome. There's all kinds of mold and they can be, biologic things that you don't think about, right? Like the cockroaches and their, decaying parts and things like that can be, both allergenic and they can be harmful. And, depending on what situation we're living in, when we're in a Hawaii, we tend to just keep our windows open. So that's actually a good thing to bring in, some fresh air, so to speak, because oftentimes if we're just rebreathing stuff that's in our homes, that's not awesome. If it's mold or mildew, or if it's danders, if it's dust mites, if it's, all these kinds of, which may just be biologic things that we could be exposing ourselves to without even thinking of it. Most commonly in Hawaii, like I said, it's mold and the danders of all these different awesome insects that we have. So a good HEPA filter, is pretty important. Change those filters often. That's what I'm doing right now on the mainland. I got to change my furnace heater filters every month and stuff like that. I just pay attention to that much more than I used to, because there's a lot of stuff. Even indoor air pollution is a real thing, and I didn't really think about it a few years ago. The outdoor air pollution I think about, it's like I don't smoke, I don't hang out with people that smoke, I try not to be around smoke and secondhand smoke and things like that, and my kids are, well aware of the dangers and harms to, those sort of toxins that are ubiquitous out in our society, the smoking, the vaping, all these kinds of things. But we don't often think about the indoor toxins that we may be breathing in, either from our household cleaners or from, the different, like in Hawaii, like I said, the molds or the mildews or the dust mites and things like that. These can be pretty nasty too. And, while I'm speaking of these kinds of inhaled toxins, I'll just briefly mention carbon monoxide, because all homes should have a carbon monoxide detector, especially if you have a heating system and things like that and things go awry. You don't want to be exposed to carbon monoxide because it is deadly. And I've seen people die from it in the ER in my, years, 20 plus years in the ER, and it is odorless and tasteless. You don't know about it, so don't run your car to warm it up in your garage if your garage is closed. I know you might be trying to not get the cold air in and stuff like that, but not a good idea. If you're going to be running your car in the garage, that garage has got to be open, stuff like that. If you have an older vehicle, you should probably check the carbon monoxide levels inside your cab of your vehicle while the vehicle's running, because a lot of those older cars aren't well insulated against the carbon monoxide, and that's in combustion, and that's in all vehicles, other than if you have a 100% electric vehicle, right? So carbon monoxide, it's deadly, it's odorless, it's colorless. You can be exposed to it without even knowing it. Be careful, be cautious, and just get the simple carbon monoxide detector. They're so affordable, and they may save your life. All right, we're getting down to the end here, guys. I hope I've kept your attention. There's so many things that we can learn about, things to avoid that are so common in our environment. One thing I have to mention is just pesticides, right? They're almost ubiquitous nowadays. There's, in these GMO plants that are out there, they are resistant to the pesticides that they're spraying all over the place. The most common, I think we've all heard of the glyphosates, right? The classic Roundups and things like that. And a lot of our foods may have this stuff in them. And, the food that will have less of it is the organic stuff. But sometimes organic fields are right next to commercial fields, and they're getting sort of the side spray, of this stuff. So I would still always recommend, washing your fruits and vegetables, even if they're organic, still wash them off. this Roundup stuff, the glyphosates are just nasty, nasty stuff. I was just reading an article this week, in fact, on its super deleterious, harmful effects on the mitochondria, which are our powerhouses. There's all kinds of issues with the glyphosates, even though the government says they're safe. I think that's political. I don't think that's actual or factual, because I've done tons of reading on the glyphosates, and I'm trying to avoid them like the plague. So organic, please, if at all possible. Buy organic, locally grown, pesticide-free, but still wash and rinse all of your food products, because they could be getting some side spray from other fields or who knows what, packaged with not awesome things. And so just always, 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 always rinse your foods, because you just never know. Unless you're growing them yourself and you're 100% aware of everything that's ever been on them, then sort of the eating dirty part is cool, right? Because you grew it in your garden, you've used organics and organic fertilizers or whatever you've used, and nothing that's chemical and toxic. Hopefully you've had, if you do your own healthful garden, you're not even using any kind of fertilizer. But if you do, organic matter, not chemical matter, would be preferable. But, simple things we can do just to round it off is just paying attention, right? Start reading the labels. Try to pay attention to what's in things like toothpaste and cosmetics and lip balms and sunscreens and whatnot. Just read the labels, just like as you would generally for the stuff that you put in your mouth. You're reading the label. Read the label to the stuff you're putting on your skin and in your hair and the hair dyes and all that too. And with respect to food, try to, if at all possible, purchase organics, right? We talked about organic food preferentially, because it's hopefully going to be pesticide free, hopefully, but still wash it. Always opt for the wild caught fish, not the farm raised. The farm raised is almost always cheaper, but it can be higher levels of the PCBs that we talked about, higher levels of mercury. So just pay attention to the sourcing. Your meats, always pay attention to the sourcing. Try to, not buy the highly processed meats, because they can be full of garbage. Plastic containers, try to avoid them. The phthalates, the BPAs that we've talked about. Just try to use glass whenever possible. And, remember to filter your air at home, change your filters, use a HEPA filter, change them once a month, these kinds of things. One thing I forgot to mention, which is cool, is have some plants in your home, right? Plants in the window is what we always had growing up, and we try to do some plants from time to time, because they can, even in a cold area, they can grow with some sunlight through the window, and they will actually help filter your air too. So I know it sounds a little cheesy, not the plastic plants. They're not going to do the trick, and they're probably going to be full of allergens and plastics and chemicals you want to avoid. But real plants in the home is kind of a cool thing. And then the filtration, we talked about this with our water, right? We want to avoid toxic exposures coming in with filtering of both our air and our water. Watch out for things like lead and fluoride in the water supply, because you may not even know it. And then, with our cleaning products, try to avoid the toxic stuff. Try to use the environmentally conscious and human safe stuff, like a lot of lemon juice and, good old fashioned baking soda, right? And then just when you're buying other products, make sure that they're not full of the harmful chemicals that I mentioned. Oh boy. Anything else? Don't smoke if at all possible. Try to avoid smoke and try to, not be exposed to those, hazardous chemicals and carcinogens. And if you do smoke, get some help. It's easy. It's free. You can call the 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They can give you all kinds of free products like nicotine patches and things to help you quit. And it'll be the best health choice that you can do this year if you smoke. And also, you'll save a buttload of money. So if you do smoke, please, 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 please get help to quit. You'll be so grateful for it. And, don't forget, last thing, don't forget about that other toxin that's out there that we don't often think about. And that's the EMF, right? We got to reduce our EMF exposure. And that's a whole podcast in and of itself. So I won't belabor it, but, simple things you can do is, try to get your phone on airplane mode as much as possible when you don't need to be responding to messages and things from the outside world. At night, I used to have to leave my phone on always, because I was the chief of the ER for over a decade. And so my phone was always on. Oh, I'm so grateful now I can turn my phone off at night, and I keep my phone away from my bedside nightstand. I used to, for many years, keep it on my nightstand, and that's just the way it was. And I'm sure I got way too many EMF exposures. And so I try to keep my phone away from the bed. I try to power it down or have it on airplane mode as much as possible. Simple things like that is it's not hard, and it's going to help you. So anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys got some value out of that. I just think that we just need to pay more attention to our exposures, because unfortunately, there's lots of common toxins out there that we don't even think about. I think we're starting to get some awareness on things like the plastics, the BPAs, but often we're not thinking about our water quality, our air quality, the heavy metals that are in fish sometimes, the mercuries, the leads out there, all kinds of chemicals that we could potentially be either consuming or putting on our skin, cosmetics, sunscreens, which was an issue for me. All these other things that we didn't always think about, but can be not only endocrine disruptors, hormonal disruptors, but maybe even carcinogenic and just not awesome for us. So just take a fresh look at you and your exposures, the skin and hair care products you use, your toothpaste, what kind of quality air you have in your home, your vehicle, and try to reduce, reuse, recycle, and use glass if at all possible. So that's it for today, guys. So thankful for you. Love you guys. Can't wait to share more. Check me out online, Modern Medicine Movement Podcast, Aloha Surf Doc on Instagram as well. Shoot me an email, modernmedicinemovementpodcast@gmail.com. And please, 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 please share, and share alike. Love you guys, and a big aloha.